Live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by Dr. Lyle M. Back. For everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery, go to ilovelyle.back.com or call 856-MAKEOVER for Dr. Lyle M. Back, proud sponsor of Football at 4. Andrew DiCecco, 97.3 ESPN.com and InsideTheBirds.com joins us right now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. A lot to get into, so let's dive right back into this Eagles offseason, which has some news stories today, Andrew. And, of course, the coaching search is at the top of that list. There's some new names out there, so let's get some of your thoughts on that to start off this Thursday edition. Let's start with maybe the most surprising news of the bunch, Kellen Moore. He was reported this morning that the Eagles are at least kicking the tires down that road. Is Moore a guy that would interest you to be the next head coach here?
Well, it's not that interesting when you look at what he's been able to do in just 3 years as being a coach in the NFL. He was somebody that was retained with Mike McCarthy, but before that he was the Cowboys quarterback coach in 2018, and he was promoted in 2019 offensive coordinator. He's had great success with Dallas, and he's done wonderful things with Dak Prescott. I think that what he's been able to accomplish at only 32 years old as a young play caller is definitely intriguing. So that's, they cast a wide net, the Eagles did, so he's a name that didn't really surprise me as much as it may have surprised others.
Now, I mean, for the people out there who might be the anti-Cowboy fan and say, look, that team stunk this year, that offense was really chumming before Dak Prescott got hurt. So it wouldn't be, a horrible, but I haven't heard his name at all. I thought it was a little premature, and I was wondering, are they just trying to interview to maybe get some intel?
There's always that outside shot, but he has more of a coaching resume than Joe Brady, more extensive at the NFL level at least. And so, he's definitely a worthy candidate. Will he be a finalist? I highly doubt that, but he's definitely somebody that in the coming years, maybe possibly next year, could find himself as a head coach in the NFL.
Yeah. Now, yesterday we discussed Brady. Now, if Joe Brady got hired, there's a lot of people that feel like he might not be ready today, but you might go through some bumpy roads that first year. But it's either get in on him now or miss out on a really good one.
Yeah, I think that I even mentioned that when I was on Tuesday is he's going to be a hot commodity, and if you don't get him now in this head coaching circuit, you might not get a chance to get him because he is a bright mind. He's highly regarded around the NFL. You're going to take your bumps. He's 31 years old. You just got to be patient with him because when everything comes together, when he builds a team the way that he wants to mold his view, his vision, it's going to be something special because everywhere he's gone, he's made an impact.
What is the message from the front office when hiring this new coach? Because, look, they fired Doug Peterson because they said he wanted to try and win next year, and we didn't necessarily, feel that we were in the best position to do it. So, obviously, with the new regime, there's time involved. You're going to give this guy an opportunity to build the culture and all. But, I just think it's a really interesting message. Like, how do you view that you fired Doug because he wanted to win? We don't really feel we're in the best position to do it. How do you take that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then you start to see these stories that start to leak throughout this whole coaching search that Doug was fighting. He fought to keep Frank Reich. They were ready to move on Frank Reich after one season. They weren't too keen on Doug Peterson after his first season. You have to give coaches time to build their team. It doesn't happen overnight, and the resources aren't always there, but you have to a lot of times you won't really know what they're able to do until 3 years after them taking the job because – and like anything, even with a draft pick, things take time to kind of marinate, and you have to be patient. And if you're a head coach and you're looking at Philadelphia as a destination, I think that some of these stories that are coming out are a little daunting, But I hope that Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie don't make the same mistake and don't act as hastily as they did in previous regimes.
Brian Dabol's also going to get an interview. He's probably my favorite guy on the list. So what do you think about him and the chances that, where he kind of stands on the pecking order of landing this job? Because he's going to be a popular name, and you can't interview him right now because he's still coaching.
Yeah, I know you're really high on him. Adam Kaplan had a nice nugget on him in the most recent Inside the Birds podcast. What he's able to do with Josh Allen in the 3 years where he struggled in his first season, and he's arguably a deserving MVP candidate this year, and the offense is really humming. He's overcome adversity in his career. He's a guy who's ready to step in right away and take the reins and look back. And I don't anticipate any growing pains wherever he goes. He's at the top of the list for many teams, and he's going to have his pick from a lot of desirable positions, much like Arthur Smith, of course, in the Tennessee Titans. So it's going to be interesting to see where he goes. Unfortunately, like you said, they're going to have to wait on him, and I think there's a small window. It's the week before the Super Bowl that the teams can talk to him if they get that far. So, and they certainly look like they have the team to be able to get that far. So it's going to be tough.
What's interesting about him, and see if you agree, is what he's done with Josh Allen. That's number one. I mean, I think there's a couple of prongs why I'm intrigued. What he's done with Josh Allen, this guy was a 52% passer. He's turned him into a guy who just took off and ran, was wildly inaccurate, and made him almost a 70% passer and an MVP candidate. He's also a part of the Belichick tree. And that's, not been good in the past, mind you. But it means, obviously he's got some well-respect in terms of his pedigree in the background. He was also the offensive coordinator at Alabama while Jalen Hurts was there. So there's another little wrinkle to the Brian Dabol, why he would be intriguing for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, he's worked for Saban, he's worked for Belichick. Like you said, he's worked with Jalen Hurts. What really stuck out to me is when Adam said that he has a very good temperament. He can get after it. He coaches hard. Coaching hard is one of the things that really stuck out to me because that's really what that Eagles team needs, particularly if they move forward with Carson Wentz. Carson is someone who needs to be coached hard. That's been well documented. And Brian Dabol is certainly a guy, even at 33, 34 years old, that could step in and do that. And I mean, obviously he's a little bit older than 33 and 34, but when he first got started, when he went through his rocky period with the Browns, he was a young coordinator, but he's grown from that. And I think that having gone through all that adversity and being able to coach hard, I think that he's going to come in there with a hardened mindset, and guys are going to really resonate with that.
Sticking with this Bills offense and how Josh Allen has clearly progressed, I know there's a lot of holes with this football team, but acquiring Diggs was huge. And I know you're big with the specific Ohio State wide receiver in the second round. When I just look at the translation of Josh Allen, I think this Eagles offense is going to need someone like that because that is such a big difference in that completion percentage, as Gil alluded to. Do you think that that's possible? That Ohio State wide receiver you're so high on, do you think that's enough?
Well, you're right. They do. Stephon Diggs, you saw what he was able to do with what the offense looked like when you get a bona fide top receiver in the offense. And the Eagles certainly do need that. In fact, I would even go as far as to say Carson Wentz in many ways reminds me of, he has similar traits to Josh Allen. So I think that would be a great fit, Hunter and Mike, if he does go there. But the thing is they need to add a top receiver. I think Chris Olave could get it done in round two. He doesn't quite have the sparkle of a Chase or Devontae Smith. It all depends on who becomes the head coach. If it's Brian Dabol, you're going to probably see an offensive player come off the board at pick number 6. But if it's a guy like Robert Saleh, well, then players like Patrick Surtain and Micah Parsons are in the conversation. So, but to answer your question, I think if it's Brian Dabol, seeing the success that he had when you got your quarterback a top weapon, I think that both receivers are going to be in the conversation there at 6.
Any interest in Ryan Day? I heard his name kind of slipped in there at the Ohio State. Now, he was the quarterback coach here for Chip Kelly a couple of years ago, so he obviously knows somebody in the organization.
Yeah, Ryan Day is a little bit further down, would be a little bit further down on my list if I was the Eagles. I don't really. I mean, he was with the Niners. He went to the Niners with Chip Kelly, and then he got the gig when the head coaching gig when Urban Meyer retired. He had great success with the Buckeyes. I believe he was 23-2, so the track record's there. But I think that if you're going to go that route, I would be more inclined to go with a Joe Brady and take your lumps your first season. And if you're going to go the route of a young coach with that type of background, that's the route that I would go. He's definitely going to get some looks at Ryan Day, but I don't know that he's ready to be a head coach just yet.
So with what we know now on the coaching search, with who's been in and what's going on, how do you kind of handicap who you like and what would be the best fit?
Well, I know you kind of got to align it with the visions of Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, and they're enamored with offense. They mentioned that Jeffrey did. He mentioned that he wanted to have an elite offense multiple times, but then you bring in a guy like a Robert Saleh and a Gerard Mayo, who I love, by the way, as a defensive coordinator candidate, not as a head coaching candidate. He's only been a coach for 2 seasons now, but I mean, I think if they're going to go the route of an offensive coach, because let's face it, they still want to have control over, they want to have a lot of say. And if you get a defensive coach in there, like when they had Jim Schwartz, they let Jim Schwartz have free reign on the defense. If they had a guy like Robert Saleh, who's a defensive-minded head coach, they're not going to have as much say over what he can do. I think they want to kind of preside over an offensive coach. So to me, that signifies, an Arthur Smith, a Brian Dabol, probably not even Brian Dabol, because he doesn't strike me as the type of coach that's going to kind of give that kind of leeway. But a young coach like an Arthur Smith or a Joe Brady would be the kind of coaches that I would kind of guess that they would be intrigued with.
Could you argue, though, that bringing over someone like Saleh would then allow him to bring over some offensive guys from the 49ers, which would give them maybe the offense and the pre-snap movement and everything that they're looking for?
Yeah, and Hunter, for me, Robert Saleh would be my top pick solely because it'd be his mindset on defense, his attitude. Guys really play hard for him, but I also like the fact of the coordinators that he would be bringing with him and the system that he can implement. You have a hard-nosed defense coupled with a modern-day offense. I think that'd be the best of both worlds from a coaching standpoint.
Yeah, and that's going to be an interesting part of it too. Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4 with us here. Who the new coach can bring with them. And I think Robert Saleh has one big thing going for him, is that when he interviews, he says, look, if you get me, you're getting maybe both of these guys coming with me, because they both want to be moving up the food chain. They're not going to get to call plays in San Francisco. So that is a big, I think, check mark for him.
Yeah, that's another reason why he's so desirable is because, you're getting a hot young coach, the defensive coach, who's had great success where he came from. He's a hot name, but then you're also getting, like I said, you're getting some brilliant offensive minds that would be coming along with him. And I think that would quickly shape any team that's looking to rebound. I think that they would get the best of both worlds by hiring Robert Saleh.
He's had a couple meetings with the Jets now, and I want to ask you, do you look at the Jets as a more intriguing destination? I know right now it looks so ugly and it looks so awful, but at the end of the day, I truly do believe not just the limited amount of spots that you can get a head coaching job, there's only 32, the cliche that said, but it's the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, it's a big market, and not that the New York Jets aren't. They obviously are, but, the logo speaks for itself. So do you think the Jets are a more intriguing destination for him?
I would say the Jets have a history of having a tough defense. I know that Joe Douglas is everyone. A lot of people speak highly of him. You don't have to worry about any kind of micromanaging. He's going to give him full support. So I think from that standpoint, I would say so. But the Jets haven't had a history of winning, obviously, but they do have a defensive pedigree. And like I said, Joe Douglas, I think Joe Douglas right there would be the key. Whereas when you're looking at Philadelphia, yes, that's you look at that's a top end market, and they've had great success, in over the last 20 years, dating back even further than that. But then there's always you look at what happened with Chip Kelly on his way out, and Howie Roseman was a prime reason for that. And you look at Doug Peterson on his way out, and you start to see these common factors here. If you're a head coach and you have your choice between a couple teams, you're going to have to look at past history. And I think that you kind of would shy away from that if that were that'd be my thinking, at least.
Do you think that the quarterback situation is going to play a big factor in hiring the coach? In other words, if the coach that comes in, hey, we want you to open up the quarterback battle. We want you to start Carson Wentz. Is that something that could be a detriment? Or, we talked about earlier, most of these coaches would probably say, I want to get my hands on Carson Wentz. So how do you think the whole quarterback thing is playing out in this search?
Yeah, I think, there's been talks that Jeffrey wanted Doug to, make it work with Carson and Doug wanted to move forward with Jalen Hurts. So to me, I think that Jeffrey Lurie is going to look for the head coach that's going to say, hey, you know what? Let me take the challenge. Let me rehabilitate this guy and make him the quarterback that he was in recent years. And because let's face it, nobody wants to take that kind of a hit. And Carson Wentz has played at a very high level before. So I think that's going to be what they're looking for in their head coach. Not like let's move away from 11. Let's see if we can get him back on track and make this an elite offense again.
Yeah, what do you make of the Troy Aikman's comments where he said Doug Peterson wanted Jalen Hurts and Jeffrey Lurie apparently wants Carson Wentz? So it almost sounds like you're walking into a situation where the owner is telling you who to play at quarterback.
Yeah, but when I read that closer, Mike, to me, it kind of, the further I read down into the article, it seemed like it was more so Aikman's opinion versus a fact. And quite frankly, I don't know I don't know how close Troy Aikman is with the Eagles organization that would hold much merit. But I mean, there's so many stories that are coming out right now and so many leaks. You don't really know what to believe in. It's hard to follow it all. But I mean, I wouldn't read into that too much. I think that what any owner would want is, can you rectify and revive our franchise quarterback and get him on the right track? And I mean, I think he's salvageable. And when you look at a lot of the coaches, in the case of Brian Dabol and Arthur Smith, and Ryan Tannehill and Josh Allen, they've had success with similar type of quarterbacks. So I mean, it's all right there, and I think that's going to be the first order of business.
Yeah, you're not wrong where you say there's a lot of news every single day, and it's nonstop. But when I woke up this morning, I saw that Jeff Stoutland's not going to return. And there's a lot of ways to look at this. Like, did he walk away from this mess going, I can't be here anymore? Internally, it's a disaster. Did the Eagles plan to move on from him? So, we'll start here. How big of a loss is that? Because this offensive line has been really – I know that it's ironic because this year they've been so banged up and it got a little ugly, but he's done a great job since he's been here.
Oh, absolutely. And talk about the news coming fast and furious. A couple hours ago, I saw a tweet that it's not definite that he's going to leave. He's still under contract with the Eagles. But as far as what he means to the team, well, he's also the run game coordinator. He's the offensive line coach. He's worked wonders with a lot of product players like Jordan Mailata. He got Nate Herbert to play at a decently high level when nobody really expected much out of him. The list goes on and on with what he's been able to do, and he's probably the most crucial assistant coach that the Eagles have right now, and they cannot afford to lose him. And then if you do lose him, you're talking about an offensive line that could very well be losing Jason Kelce. Jason Peters won't be back. At least we think. And Lane Johnson's coming off an ankle injury, and you're going to have a lot of young linemen that were really starting to take to his tutelage. Now, all of a sudden, not having that presence there, you're going to have another coach coming in, bringing in with his new ideologies and what he looks for in linemen. Some coaches like the big burly linemen and guys like Jeff Stoutland, like the linemen that are kind of like Jason Kelce, that are more athletic and can get out there on screens and things like that. So, I mean, it would be an instrumental. It's instrumental that he stays, because if he leaves, that's a massive void that I don't care who you bring in. It's going to be really tough to fill.
All right. There are games this weekend. Let's get Andrew's take on the NFL divisional round. You got L.A. going to Green Bay. That Rams defense is pretty legit.
Yeah, the Rams defense is legit, Mike, and it did enough to keep them in the game when Jared Goff, frankly, didn't play his best. I mean, obviously he wasn't expecting to come in. John Wolford got knocked out of the game early, but I would say I would never count out Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, to me, is playing at such a high level right now that I expect him to carry that team to the Super Bowl. So I don't know that the Rams defense will be enough to keep them in that game.
Yeah, I've been, there was a period during the year where I was like, this Rams team's pretty good, and then they kind of lost me a little bit, but their defense is pretty good, and where they got 30 points last week. I mean, so they did score with Goff even banged up. So that's your first game on Saturday. Baltimore, Buffalo. This one's a tough one to get a read on because Buffalo is like the darling. Baltimore wasn't even in the playoffs like 4 weeks ago, and then all of a sudden they like ripped off all these games, and then here they are. So I'm very intrigued by this one.
That's my favorite game of the weekend. Actually, I'll be definitely tuned in for that one. That is going to be the battle, the battle of the wits. There, you're going to have Lamar Jackson, who just won his first playoff game, and he kind of willed them to that win. He's running all over the place, but you also have the Josh Allen and Buffalo. They just took a hit. They just lost Zach Allen. He was really their power running back. So, I mean, it's going to be an offensive explosion, in my opinion. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored, and I think ultimately the poise of Josh Allen and Brian Dabol, the coaching of Brian Dabol, is going to be too much for the Ravens to kind of overcome, and I think Buffalo's going to move on.
All right, your Sunday slate, both games on 97.3. All four games, by the way, are on 97.3. It's Cleveland, Kansas City. Now, Cleveland obviously was the biggest surprise of last weekend. Kansas City, they have not been blowing these teams away. They haven't been the same juggernaut as they were seemingly the year before. But can Cleveland really go there and pull this off?
Man, I hope so. I'm pulling for Cleveland. It's a great story. The franchise and the fans really deserve it. But, you're talking about an offensive juggernaut in the Kansas City Chiefs. I just don't know if the style of football that the Browns like to play matches up well with what the Kansas City Chiefs like to do. The Browns would ideally like to slow it down on the football, and I don't know that kind of game is going to work for them because they're going to have to keep pace with the Kansas City Chiefs, and I don't know if they have the personnel to do it.
And then the final game, these two great quarterbacks, probably the last time we see Breeze if they end up losing that game against Brady. That is the late game on Sunday. They've played twice, so what do you make of this third meeting?
The History Channel Bowl.
I've seen that. That's a great – whoever did that with the beards is fantastic.
Oh, I loved it, man. It was hilarious. But, I have a hard time thinking that Tom Brady's going to go out quietly. You saw he got embarrassed in that primetime game. I just think that it's his time to get one over on Drew Brees this season. The Buccaneers in general haven't had much luck with the Saints this year, but I think it's going to change. I think you're going to see a motivated and angry Tom Brady really go to the air and attack that secondary. One thing to look at is going to be Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, their safety for the Saints. He has a knack for getting under guys' skin and getting guys ejected to swing at him and things like that. And that to me seems like that would be a ploy to get a Mike Evans who does get chippier. He has history with Marshawn Lattimore to kind of get him out of the game. So who knows? I think it's going to be a close one, but I think the Buccaneers are going to pull it out.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, of course, it's the Football at 4 powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Football at 4 here on the Sports Best tomorrow. We'll talk to Adam Kaplan, get his take on the coaching situation and the NFL playoffs, the Eagles offseason, the draft, all that and more. Football at 4. Andrew, have a great weekend, man.
You too, guys. Take care.
All right, there you go. 425. It is the Sports Bash. Football at 4 brought to you by Dr. Lyle M. Back. 856 Makeover for Dr. Lyle M. Back, proud sponsor of Football at 4.